Serves are by far the most important aspect of table tennis, and it's really important that you master it.
And in today's video, we're going to teach you how to develop a world-class serve that will help you win matches easily.
I've been playing table tennis for only 3 years, and I have become one of the best players in my country. Having a good serve is a superpower. I can't tell you how many times I won matches against players much better than me just because of how good my serves are.
We have 10 years of combined table tennis experience, have competed in hundreds of tournaments, spent thousands of dollars on private coaching, and have spent countless hours practicing all the things that we've learned. And today we're going to share all of it with you for absolutely free. And we promise that by the end of this video, you will have a clear plan to develop an effective serve quickly. And if you can't stay on this video for 5 minutes without clicking off, we've got some bad news for you. You're probably not going to make it.
We have come up with a 4-step formula that will help you develop a world-class serve easily. But the key here is to follow all 4 steps, because if you only miss one of them, the whole chain falls apart.
Step 1 is generating spin. Very few beginners understand how complex the movement really is. They just say something like, oh, I use my arm and I brush under the ball and create underspin. But it's not that simple. It all starts from your feet and moves through your hips, your core, your shoulders, and ultimately ends with your forearm and your wrist and your fingers snapping spin into the ball.
Let's explain each part in detail. But first, here's a concept that you must understand. The racket speed generated, which is how fast you move your racket, plus the softness of the contact, equals the amount of spin generated. So if you have fast racket speed, but a hard contact, the ball will just go flying. And if you have a soft contact but no racket speed, the ball will stay at this place. So the important thing is to have both. But how do you generate a lot of racket speed?
It's a great question. The best way to generate racket speed is to use your wrist. Your wrist is a small and flexible joint and it can be moved quickly, which will ultimately result in your racket moving faster and creating more spin on the ball.
Using the wrist is great, but if you want a world-class serve, you need more than that. So you need to go from loose to tense really quickly. Think of a whip. When you swing it, the handle starts off loose and relaxed. But when you snap your wrist at the end, the tip of the whip moves super fast and makes a sharp crack. That quick sudden stop at the end is what makes the whip move so fast and powerful. In table tennis, it's the same idea. Every time! In table tennis, it's the same idea. You start by swinging your racket loosely and you tense up quickly just before hitting the ball. The sudden change of speed is what makes the racket move much faster, which will in turn make the serve have a lot more spin.
There are 2 ways to make it stop. Okay, the first one is by hitting the racket into your waist. This is an abrupt way to stop the racket. There's another one, which is stopping it manually by just using your arm and wrist to break as you make contact with the ball. Both work, but we found that hitting the racket into our side generates more spin, maybe because it creates that breaking effect more abruptly.
But there is a reason why most club level players never achieve a world-class serve. They spend hours practicing serves but see no results, and the spin is mediocre at best. But the thing is, they don't realize that they've been missing the most important piece of the puzzle.
To generate the most racket speed, you want to use your waist and transfer your body weight effectively. To do that, when you throw the ball up, your waist will turn back and your body weight will shift to your back foot. As you're going to make contact with the ball, you push off of that back foot and then you turn your waist back to normal. Your weight shifts to the front foot, and most of the time pros do that with a stomp.
The tip of the whip is what creates a powerful crack and is what makes the most energy. But did you know you could use your fingers just like the tip of the whip and add insane spin to your serves?
Your fingers are very important. They're the only part of your body that are in direct contact with the racket, which means that they have the most influence over how it moves. So when you're serving, don't just use your wrist, also make sure you're using your fingers.
So on the pendulum serve, for example, here's how I use my fingers. I use the middle finger as a trigger, so I push on it like that, and I use my index from behind and I push on it, and both of them together will make an insanely quick racket speed, and it will add a lot more spin to your serve. Guys, I just created a free community where you can get access to me directly and get coaching for completely free. So click the link in the description.
Having an insane amount of spin is a great thing, but there's still one thing missing. It's the ability to create a no spin serve. To make a serve have no spin, there are 3 things that you can do.
So the first thing you need to do is not use your wrist. The goal is to prevent brushing, so don't use your wrist. But the problem here is that it's pretty easy for your opponent to read. So make sure you stick around for step number 3, where we show you how to actually disguise it.
Tip number 2 is to hit the back of the racket. There's too much rubber here, so you create a lot of spin. But when you hit the back of the racket, there's nothing left. So there's no spin generated in this area. Tip number 3 is the best one. You want to make sure that the ball contacts the area nearest the handle. You notice that there's absolutely no spin generated here. You can move your wrist quickly, but at the same time, the ball still doesn't get any spin on it.
Step number 2 is placement. Look, even the spinniest serve in the world is useless without good placement. If you don't change the placement of your serve, your opponent will start returning your serves like a drill, and it will be useless.
The first thing you need to think about is the danger zone. You probably guessed by the name that it's the area where you don't want to serve. It's where the bounce goes straight into your opponent's hitting area, and he's going to be able to attack it easily. So you want to either serve short, which is before the danger zone, or you want to serve long, which is after the danger zone. As a rule of thumb, you want to be serving 80% short and about 20% long.
Here are a few tips to make your short serves better. First, make the bounce on your table as close as possible to the net so that it actually stays short. And the second thing is you should avoid hitting the ball too hard. And you do that by brushing the ball, not hitting it.
Look, your serve is only as good as it is low. A high serve is a recipe for disaster. At that point, you might as well grab the scoreboard, hand it to your opponent, and give them free points. So if you don't want to give your opponent free points, then make sure you get low. Lower your whole body closer to the table when you serve. You want to make sure that your contact point is happening just right above the net height. So if you're standing all the way up and your body is high, you're going to be hitting the ball down when you serve, which makes it bounce higher.
Having a good short serve is great, but there's still one thing missing. It's the ability to do a long, fast serve.
Here's a few tips to make your long serve even better. The first tip is to hit as close to the white line as possible, both on your side of the table and your opponent's side. This gives the ball the most distance to travel, so you can put a lot more speed on it and still hit the table. The second part is to use your body and your wrist only. If you're using too much arm in this serve, you're going to lose a lot of control. So use the snap in your body and your wrist to power the serve. And the final tip is to hit more into the wood. You don't want to use too much friction because that's going to make the ball travel very slowly and make it easily returnable for your opponent. When you're using the wood, you can add a mix of speed and spin, which makes the ball faster and harder to return.
There's a type of serve that is absolutely abused in the pro scene, but is really neglected at the lower level. What if I told you this type of serve can literally make your serve 10 times better? It is called the half-long serves.
Half-long serves are when the second bounce of the ball is near the end line on your opponent's side of the table. Half-long serves are difficult to do just because of the fact that they're harder to control the depth. You're not wanting to make the serve fly off the end of the table. You're wanting to keep it short, but just long enough for that second bounce to hit that white line. A good tip is to make the first bounce halfway on your side of the table. This will lead to the proper bounce on your opponent's side where the ball is landing near the end line. This one will take a lot more practice to master, but you will get way better results. The reason it's so difficult for your opponents to return it is because it's bouncing close to the end line, they have to decide whether they want to attack it or push it. So they've got twice as many decisions to make as they normally would if you gave them an easier serve. The other part of this is that even if they push it, it's very difficult to make it go short, and this sets you up for free attacks.
So we talked about depth, which is the first piece of the puzzle. But you need to change the placement of the ball. To serve it diagonally, you're gonna use your waist and stop it early. And if you want to serve down the line, you're gonna use your waist more. And the rule of thumb is that you need to be facing the direction you want the ball to go. For this part, we're just talking about how to place the ball. And we will talk about the tactics part of placement in the tactics section.
Deception is a really important part of the serve. Even if you have the most spin in the world, once your opponent gets used to it, it's going to become useless. We will show you 6 ways to make your serve as deceptive as possible, and it's really important to note that you don't have to do all 7 of them. Just pick one that you like the most and get really good at it.
Step number 1. Make the contact as short as possible. To do this, let's repeat once again. Don't use your forearm, use your wrist, and use it in a super quick and fast motion. This will give your opponent less time to actually read what spin you're putting on the ball, and it will be a lot harder for him to read it.
Step number 2 is hiding your backswing. If your opponent can see the way that you swing your paddle back, they'll also follow the way that the paddle moves forward, giving away the type of spin and contact that's going on with the ball. You can stop this by keeping the paddle and ball contact close to your body. Brian's currently working on a method of serving where he's holding his bat below the table and actually behind his body to start. This way the opponent isn't able to actually see the direction of his paddle until the very last minute when he contacts the ball.
You may be thinking that what you've learned so far is enough, but we promise that without steps 3 to 7, you won't actually maximize your serve potential. Step number 3, stomp when you serve. So there's 2 reasons why you should stomp when you serve. The first one is that brushing the ball makes a high-pitched sound, and hitting the ball makes like a lower pitched sound. So if you can cover that up with the stomp, then great. And then the other thing is that it's easier for you to transfer your body weight.
Step 4 is to learn how to create different spins with the same racket angle. 45 degrees, you can create 2 different spins. So with underspin, if you're hitting the bottom part of the racket, you're going to create friction downwards and generate underspin. At the same time, you can wait and hit the ball right here and then create topspin. So here versus here. And that creates 2 different spins with the same angle. And that leads me to step number 5, which is make every spin have the same follow through. On the underspin, you go like this, but follow through as if it was a topspin after. On the topspin, do the same thing and follow through. This is going to give them an extra element to question what kind of spin you put on the ball.
So tip number 6 is a really cool tip that I figured out by myself. To disguise your dead serve, you can actually start, you show them that you want to do underspin. So you're like that, and you do the underspin as if it's underspin, but like I told you, you hit it from the back part so that it doesn't have spin. And then you disguise it, so you show them that it's underspin, and you do as if you're gonna disguise it as topspin. So in his head, he's thinking, okay, he tried to disguise the underspin by doing the topspin at the end, but it's actually, you're 2 steps ahead of him. You did this on purpose so that he pushes it, it will go up and you will smash it.
At this point, you have all the information you need to have a great serve, but now it's time to put it all together and develop a world-class serve with tactics.
Tactics are the main difference between amateur and professional players. The goal of tactics is to use your strength and abuse your opponent's weaknesses. And it actually makes the game a lot simpler for you. So, because when someone's looping the ball at 100 miles an hour, you don't have time to think about the best decision to make. You need to have predefined answers for every ball so that you can actually attack it and expect it. The key to developing a stronger serve strategy is to focus on setting up the next phase of the rally instead of just trying to win the point outright. When serving, the goal is to make serve that lead to returns that you like. So think, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? How do I want the serve to be returned? And these are all things you should keep in mind.
It's important that you serve with intention and that you use the right spin and placement to get the return that you want. So if you're someone that likes to counter, for example, you would serve topspin. Your opponent might flick topspin back to you, allowing you to do a counter loop. On the other hand, if you're someone that likes a slower game, you might serve underspin or no spin. Your opponent's going to push that ball back, giving you the opportunity to slow loop and open up the rally. In either situation, you're serving in a way that's going to give you a follow-up that you're able to comfortably follow up on.
Here are 3 tips you can use so that you can use tactics in your matches. First, abuse the wide angles. When you're serving to the wide angles, most of the time your opponent will just return it diagonally. You can expect it and use your strength and attack it properly. The second thing is that you shouldn't save your best serves for the end. I think I remember Anders Lind talking about this. He said that you should use your good serves to create a lead and not use them at the end when you need it. Use them to create a bigger lead. And the third tip, like we talked about, it's really important that you have predefined answers for every possible scenario. For example, if you're doing a long underspin serve, the goal of the serve is to catch your opponent off guard. So if you play it long to the backhand, let's say 80% of the time, he will get caught off guard and just push it long diagonally, so to your backhand. You can expect it, step around and kill it. Then there's the other 10%, he might push it down the line. So on that 10% you just move and attack it also down the line. And if he loops it, it's probably not gonna be such a very good loop, but if he does, you can just go and block it down the line. And that's, for example, that's a tactic you can use in your matches.
Guys, what we've shared with you in this video is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to tactics. It's so much more complicated than what we can share in one video alone.
So if you want to learn how the best players use tactics, check out this video where we show you how Wang Shuqin absolutely destroyed Harimoto using tactics.